The infiltrator's heart, the red dust of Mars, swirled around the military compound. As Nyx adjusted her synthetic skin for the 100th time that morning, 3 months of perfect mimicry, and still she felt like a fraud wearing this human shell. Her real form lay dormant beneath layers of bioengineered tissue, waiting for the moment she could shed this disguise and return to her true nature. The Kethmori had chosen her for this mission because of her unique ability to adapt. Unlike her warrior brethren, Nyx possessed the rare gift of emotional resonance, allowing her to understand and mirror the feelings of other species. What her commanders hadn't anticipated was how deeply human emotions could penetrate her carefully constructed barriers. "Rodriguez, you're up for combat training," barked Sergeant Torres, his voice cutting through the morning briefing. Nyx nodded, her false human name rolling off her tongue like a practiced lie. She had studied their military protocols for months, memorizing every gesture, every response that would make her invisible among them. The training arena buzzed with activity as soldiers prepared for the day's exercises. Nyx moved with calculated precision, her enhanced reflexes held in check to match human limitations. Too fast, and they would notice. Too slow, and she would fail her mission. The balance required constant concentration. "Hey, new girl." The voice belonged to Captain James Rivera, a man whose presence had been disrupting her focus for weeks. His dark hair was perpetually disheveled, and his brown eyes held a warmth that made her synthetic heart skip beats. It wasn't supposed to feel. "You seem tense. First time in the big leagues." Nyx forced a smile, the expression feeling foreign on her borrowed face. "Something like that, Captain." His proximity sent unexpected signals through her nervous system, reactions she couldn't quite classify or control. This wasn't part of her programming. "Call me James when we're training. Rank gets people killed when they're thinking too hard about protocol." He gestured toward the weapons rack. "What's your preferred loadout?" She selected a standard plasma rifle, its weight familiar in her hands. The Kethmori had similar weapons, though theirs were far more advanced. "I'm adaptable," she replied, testing the weapon's balance. "Good answer." James picked up his own rifle, checking the charge levels with practiced efficiency. "Today we're running urban combat scenarios. The key is communication and trust. Can you handle that?" Trust. The word hit her like a physical blow. She was here to betray everything these humans represented, to study their weaknesses and report back to her superiors. Yet something in James's expression made her chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't name. "I think so," she whispered, hating how genuine her uncertainty sounded. The simulation began without warning. Holographic enemies materialized around them, their weapons firing bursts of harmless light that would register as kills if they connected. Nyx moved through the urban landscape with James at her side, their movements falling into a natural rhythm that surprised her. Left flank to contacts. James called out, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Nyx pivoted, her enhanced senses picking up the enemies before her human eyes should have seen them. She forced herself to hesitate, to react with human timing rather than her natural speed. The plasma bolt that would have killed her struck the wall, where her head had been a fraction of a second earlier. James tackled her to the ground, his body covering hers as more shots rang out overhead. The weight of him, the warmth of his breath, against her neck, sent shockwaves through her carefully maintained control. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, concerned. His face was inches from hers, and she could see flecks of gold in his brown eyes that her data files had never mentioned. "Yes," she managed, though every system in her body was screaming warnings about proximity, about the danger of feeling too much. "Thank you." They completed the simulation with perfect scores, their teamwork seamless in a way that made the other soldiers take notice. As they walked back to the barracks, James fell into step beside her, his presence both comforting and terrifying. "You fight like you've done this before," he observed, not quite making it a question. "Your reflexes are incredible." Panic fluttered in her chest. Had she been too obvious? "I trained hard before coming here." "Where did you train?" The question was casual, but Nyx detected the subtle probing beneath his words. Captain Rivera was more observant than she had given him credit for. "Classified training program." She deflected, using the military's own secrecy against itself. You know how it is. James nodded, but his eyes remained thoughtful. Yeah, I know how it is. He paused at the entrance to the barracks. Listen, there's a recreation period tonight. Some of us are gathering in the common area to decompress. You should join us. The invitation was innocent enough, but Nix felt the weight of it like a physical force. Socializing meant more chances to slip up, more opportunities for her carefully constructed identity to crack. Yet the thought of spending time with James, of seeing him smile in a setting that wasn't about warfare and survival, made her synthetic heart race. I'll think about it, she said, knowing she was already lost. As she watched him walk away, Nix pressed her palm against her chest, feeling the artificial heartbeat that had become all too real. Her mission was clear: observe, analyze, report. But James Rivera was becoming a complication she hadn't planned for, and for the first time since arriving on Mars, she wondered if some missions were meant to fail. The monster within 3 days had passed since the training exercise, and Nix found herself struggling with changes she couldn't explain. Her synthetic skin felt too tight, her borrowed heartbeat too erratic. Every time James smiled at her across the mess hall, something deep inside her chest would flutter like a caged bird trying to escape. The recreation evening had been a disaster of the most wonderful kind. She had sat beside James as he told stories about his childhood on Earth, his laughter infectious even to her alien sensibilities. When he had brushed her hand while reaching for his drink, she had nearly lost control of her disguise entirely. The brief contact had sent electrical impulses racing through her nervous system, responses that had nothing to do with her mission parameters. Rodriguez, you're distracted. Sergeant Torres observed during morning drills. Your reaction time is off. Nix forced herself to focus, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. Her enhanced senses were picking up things they shouldn't. Emotions from the humans around her bleeding through her carefully constructed barriers. James's concern for her well-being felt like a warm weight in her chest. The fear radiating from newer recruits tasted metallic in her mouth. She was losing the ability to filter out the emotional noise. I'm fine, Sergeant, she replied, though they both knew it was a lie. James approached her after the drill, his expression thoughtful. Walk with me, he said, not quite making it an order. They moved away from the other soldiers, toward the observation deck that overlooked the Martian landscape. You've been different lately, he said once they were alone, distant. Are you having second thoughts about being here? The question hit closer to home than he could possibly know. Nix stared out at the red horizon, where the twin moons of Mars hung like pale coins in the amber sky. Sometimes I wonder if I belong anywhere, she admitted, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Everyone feels that way sometimes. James moved closer, his shoulder almost touching hers. When I first got here, I used to stare out at Earth and wonder if I'd made the right choice leaving home. Do you regret it? She asked, genuinely curious about his human perspective. Not anymore. He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her synthetic skin warm. Some things are worth the risk of leaving everything behind. Before she could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the compound. The sound was deafening, urgent, unlike anything she had heard during her time here. James immediately shifted into combat mode, his casual demeanor replaced by focused determination. Code Red, he said, pulling out his communicator. All units to stations. Unknown hostile detected in Sector 7. They ran through the corridors together, joining streams of soldiers, heading toward the armory. Nix's mind raced as she tried to process what could have triggered such a response. Her people hadn't mentioned sending anything else to Mars. This was supposed to be a solo reconnaissance mission. What kind of hostile? She asked as they armed themselves. Unknown. James replied grimly. Scanner readings are unusual. It's not showing up as any known species in our databases. They reached the outer perimeter where other soldiers had already established a defensive line. Through the reinforced windows, Nix could see something moving in the distance. Something that made her stolen heart skip several beats. The creature was massive, easily 3 times the height of a human, with chitinous armor that reflected the Martian sunlight like black mirrors. Its movements were fluid, predatory, and terrifyingly familiar. It was a Valkyrie hunter, one of the most dangerous species in known space. "My God," whispered one of the soldiers. "What is that thing?" Nyx's mind reeled. The Valkyrie were enemies of her people, savage creatures that killed for sport rather than survival. What was one doing on Mars? Had it followed her here? The implications were terrifying. "It's heading straight for the compound," James observed. His voice steadied despite the circumstances. "All units, prepare for contact." The creature moved with impossible speed, covering the distance between the perimeter and the outer walls in seconds. Plasma fire erupted from the defensive positions, but the bolts seemed to have little effect on its armored hide. It struck the outer wall with tremendous force, and the entire structure shuddered. "Fall back to secondary positions," James ordered. "Civilian personnel to the emergency shelters." Nyx felt her control slipping. The proximity of the Valkyrie was triggering responses in her physiology that she couldn't suppress. Her synthetic skin began to shimmer, tiny fractures appearing as her true nature fought to emerge. The emotional dampeners that kept her alien instincts in check were failing. "Rodriguez, you're bleeding," James said, noticing the silver fluid that was seeping through the cracks in her disguise. "I'm fine," she lied, pressing her hands against the failing synthetic tissue. Just a scratch from the debris, but she wasn't fine. The Valkyrie's presence was calling to something primal in her genetics, something that recognized it as a mortal threat to everything she had come to care about. Her true form was fighting to break free, to answer the challenge in the way her species had evolved to do. The creature breached the outer wall with a sound like thunder. Soldiers scattered as it emerged into the compound, its multiple eyes scanning for targets. When its gaze fell on Nyx, it paused, its head tilting in a gesture she recognized as confusion. "It's looking at you," James said, his voice tight with tension. "Why is it looking at you?" Nyx felt the last of her synthetic skin beginning to fail. The silver fluid was flowing more freely now, and her borrowed human features were starting to blur. She had seconds before her true nature would be revealed to everyone. "James," she whispered, her voice already changing as her vocal cords shifted. "I need you to trust me." What are you talking about?" He turned to look at her, and his eyes widened in shock. "Rodriguez, what's happening to you?" Her disguise was dissolving like smoke, revealing the luminescent silver skin beneath. Her eyes shifted from human brown to the deep violet of her true species. The borrowed features melted away, replaced by the elegant bone structure and delicate scales that marked her as Kefmori. "My name isn't Rodriguez," she said, her voice now carrying the harmonic undertones of her people. "It's Nyx, and I'm not human." James stared at her, his weapon lowering slightly in his shock. Around them, other soldiers were beginning to notice the transformation, their voices rising in alarm and confusion. But Nyx only had eyes for James, watching as understanding and betrayal warred in his expression. "You're one of them," he said quietly. "You're the enemy." The words cut deeper than any weapon could have. "No," she whispered. "I was, but not anymore." The Valkyrie roared, a sound that shook the very foundations of the compound. It was advancing on their position, its massive claws leaving gouges in the metal flooring. Nyx could feel its hunger, its desire for violence and destruction. It would kill everyone here unless someone stopped it, someone who understood what it was. "I can stop it," she said, her true voice carrying clearly over the chaos. "But I need you to let me." James looked at her, then at the approaching monster, then back at her transformed face. She could see the moment he made his decision, the moment he chose to trust the enemy who had stolen his heart. The touch that changed everything. Nyx stepped forward, her true form now fully revealed in the harsh artificial light of the compound. Her silver skin caught the emergency lighting, creating patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury. The other soldiers backed away from her, their weapons trained on this new threat they couldn't understand. "Hold your fire," James commanded, his voice cutting through the confusion. "That's an order, sir." "She's not human," Sergeant Torres protested, his rifle aimed squarely at Nyx's chest. "She could be working with that thing." "She's not," James said with a certainty that surprised even himself. "I can feel it." Nyx felt a surge of gratitude that nearly overwhelmed her. Even knowing what she was, even understanding that she had been deceiving him for months, James was still protecting her. The emotion was so pure, so powerful, that it made her enhanced senses sing. The Valkyrie creature had paused its advance, studying the scene with predatory intelligence, its multiple eyes fixed on Nyx, and she could sense its confusion. Her scent was wrong, contaminated by prolonged exposure to human emotions. To the creature, she no longer smelled like prey or threat, but something else entirely. "What is that thing?" James asked, not taking his eyes off the massive predator. "A Valkyrie hunter," Nyx replied, her harmonious voice carrying easily over the compound's noise. "They're apex predators from the outer rim. They hunt for sport, not survival." "How do we kill it?" "You don't." Nyx began walking toward the creature, her movements fluid and purposeful. "Valkyrie have armor that can deflect most energy weapons, but they have one weakness." "What weakness?" James followed her, ignoring the protests from his soldiers. "They're empathic feeders. They consume fear and pain as much as flesh." Nyx's violet eyes never left the creature as it watched her approach. "But they can't process certain emotions. Love, compassion, sacrifice. These feelings are poison to them." The Valkyrie let out another roar, this one tinged with uncertainty. It could sense something different about the approaching figure, something that didn't fit its understanding of prey species. "My people discovered this centuries ago," Nyx continued, her voice steady despite the danger. "We learned to weaponize our capacity for empathy, but it requires direct contact." "You're going to touch that thing." James grabbed her arm, his human warmth seeping through her transformed skin. "It'll kill you." "Maybe," she admitted, looking back at him with eyes that held depths of starlight. "But it's the only way to save everyone here." James stared at her, and she could see the war playing out in his expression. Duty warred with something deeper, something that had been growing between them since their first meeting. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." Nyx gently pulled free from his grasp, though every instinct screamed at her to stay in the safety of his touch. "James, I need you to know something. My mission here, the reason I came to Mars, it was to study human weaknesses, to find ways my people could defeat you if necessary." The admission hung between them like a physical barrier. She could feel his emotions shifting, the trust beginning to crack under the weight of her betrayal. "But you changed everything," she continued, her voice soft but carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. "You made me understand what it means to love someone more than your own survival." The Valkyrie was moving again, its patience exhausted. It covered the remaining distance in a single bound, landing just meters away from where Nyx stood. Up close, it was even more terrifying, its obsidian claws gleaming and its fanged maw dripping with corrosive saliva. "NYX," James whispered, raising his weapon despite knowing it would be useless. She turned to smile at him one last time, memorizing the way the emergency lights caught the gold flecks in his brown eyes. "Take care of yourself, Captain Rivera." Then she stepped forward and placed her hands directly on the Valkyrie's armored chest. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. The creature's roar became a shriek of agony as alien emotions flooded its system. Nyx's empathic abilities, enhanced by months of human contact and amplified by her feelings for James, poured into the predator like liquid fire. She showed it love, the gentle way James had touched her hand during their quiet moments together. She shared compassion, the concern in his voice when he asked about her well-being. She flooded it with sacrifice, her willingness to die to protect beings who weren't even her own species. The Valkyrie convulsed, its massive form writhing as it tried to process emotions that were antithetical to its nature. Silver light began to emanate from where Nyx's hands touched its armor, spreading across its body like veins of liquid starlight. "What's happening to it?" someone whispered. The creature's roars became weaker, more confused. Its predatory aggression was being overwhelmed by foreign concepts of selflessness and care. The Valkyrie were designed to feed on fear and hatred, not love and sacrifice. These emotions were breaking down its neural pathways, rewriting its fundamental programming. Nyx felt the connection deepening, and with it came an unexpected revelation. The creature wasn't just a mindless predator. Beneath the layers of genetic modification and artificial aggression, there was something else: intelligence, pain, loneliness. "You're not just a weapon," she whispered to it, understanding flooding through her. "Someone made you this way." The Valkyrie's struggles began to weaken. The silver light had spread across its entire body now, and where it touched, the creature's form was changing. The aggressive bone spurs were retracting. The venomous glands were shutting down. The multiple eyes, once filled with predatory hunger, were becoming clear and aware. "Impossible," breathed Sergeant Torres. She's taming it." The transformation complete. The creature that had been a Valkyrie hunter collapsed to its knees before Nyx. When it looked up at her, its eyes held intelligence and something that might have been gratitude. It spoke in a voice like grinding stone, words in a language none of the humans recognized, but Nyx understood perfectly. "Thank you," it said. "I remember now. I remember who I was before they changed me." The compound fell silent except for the distant hum of life support systems. Every soldier, every officer, every person within sight was staring at the impossible scene before them. The alien spy who had lived among them as human, standing beside the monster that had been their enemy, both transformed by something as simple and powerful as compassion. James was the first to move. He walked slowly toward Nyx, his weapon lowered, his eyes never leaving her face. When he reached her, he could see that the effort had cost her. Silver blood seeped from her nose, and her luminescent skin had dimmed considerably. "Are you all right?" he asked, the same concern in his voice that had made her synthetic heart race weeks ago. "I will be," she replied, swaying slightly on her feet. "But James, there's something you need to know. This creature, it wasn't here by accident. Someone said it. Someone who knows I'm here." The implications of her words were staggering. If someone had sent a Valkyrie hunter to Mars, it meant Nyx's cover had been blown. It meant her people knew about her feelings for humans, about her compromised mission. It meant they were both in more danger than they had ever imagined. "Then we'll face it together," James said, reaching out to take her hand. When their fingers intertwined, silver and pink, alien and human, the last barriers between them finally fell away. The battlefield had indeed fallen silent when she touched the enemy's monster. But in that silence, something new had been born, something that neither species had experienced before, something worth fighting for. The medical bay buzzed with tension as Nyx sat on the examination table, her silver skin still glowing faintly from the empathic connection. James stood beside her, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder while Dr. Martinez ran scans with equipment that had never been designed for alien physiology. "Fascinating," the doctor murmured, studying the readings. "Her cellular structure is completely unlike anything in our databases. The energy patterns are off the charts. Will she be all right?" James asked, his concern evident in every word. "As far as I can tell, yes, but I'm essentially guessing here." Dr. Martinez glanced between them. "Captain, you realize this situation is far beyond our standard protocols." James nodded grimly. "I know, but she saved all our lives." Outside in the corridor, Nyx could hear the heated discussions taking place. Command had been notified. Questions were being asked. Soon, they would want answers that she wasn't sure she could give without betraying everything she had come to care about. The transformed Valkyrie, who had chosen the name Keeper when asked, sat quietly in the corner of the medical bay. Its presence was no longer threatening, but the soldiers remained nervous around it. The creature had revealed disturbing information about its origins, information that changed everything Nyx thought she knew about her mission. "Tell me about your people," James said quietly, pulling up a chair beside the examination table. "The real story." Nyx took a deep breath, knowing that complete honesty was the only path forward. "The Kethmori are an ancient species. We've been watching younger races for centuries, trying to determine which ones might threaten galactic stability. And humans were classified as potentially dangerous. Your species adapts to quickly, loves to fiercely, fights to hard when threatened." She managed a weak smile. "My superiors were right to be concerned. So they sent you to spy on us." "Not exactly." Nyx's expression grew troubled. "I volunteered for this mission because I believed in it. I thought I was protecting the galaxy from another aggressive species, but the more time I spent with humans, The more I realized how wrong we were. James leaned forward, his eyes intense. What changed your mind? You did. The admission came out as barely a whisper. All of you. The way you care for each other. The way you're willing to sacrifice for strangers. The way you find hope in impossible situations. I've studied dozens of species, James. None of them love the way humans do. Before James could respond, Keeper spoke from the corner, its voice still carrying that grinding, stone-like quality. The Kathmori are not the only ones watching. It said, there are others, darker ones. Nyx felt ice form in her veins. What do you mean? I was not created by accident. The Valkyrie were engineered by the Dominion of Shadows. They have been using us as weapons, sending us to eliminate threats to their expansion. Keeper's multiple eyes fixed on Nyx. They sent me to kill you because you were compromised. The Dominion of Shadows, Nyx breathed. But they're myths, stories told to frighten children. No myth, Keeper said sadly. I was one of their weapons for 30 cycles before they sent me here. They have been manipulating younger species for millennia, using them to fight their wars while they remain hidden. James stood up, pacing the small medical bay. So let me get this straight. You're from a species that's been spying on us. This creature was sent by some shadow organization to kill you because you've been compromised by human emotions, and now we're all in danger because of it. Yes, Nyx said simply. I'm sorry, James. I never meant for any of this to happen. Don't apologize for caring about us. James stopped pacing and looked directly at her. But we need to know what we're up against. What will your people do when they find out about this? Nyx closed her eyes, trying to push away the images that came to mind. They'll send a retrieval team. If I refuse to come willingly, they'll classify me as a rogue agent and eliminate me. And if you go with them, they'll perform a memory wipe, remove all traces of my time here, my feelings for you, everything that makes me who I've become. She opened her eyes, and James could see tears forming in them. I'll become the perfect Kathmori agent again, cold, calculating, without the capacity for love. That's not going to happen, James said firmly. We'll find another way. There is no other way. Nyx's voice carried centuries of resignation. My people are more advanced than yours. They have technology that could level this entire planet if they choose to use it. Then we'll have to make sure they don't choose to use it. James sat back, down, taking her hands in his. Nyx, I need you to contact them. Arrange a meeting. James, no. They'll kill you, maybe. But I think you're underestimating something your people haven't accounted for. James's grip tightened on her hands. They don't understand what humans are capable of when we're fighting for something we love. Dr. Martinez cleared his throat. Captain, I hate to interrupt, but we have a situation. Long-range sensors are picking up something approaching Mars orbit. Something big. Nyx felt her heart sink. They're already here. James activated his communicator. All units to battle stations. This is not a drill. He looked at Nyx, his brown eyes filled with determination. How long do we have? Hours. At most, they'll want to finish this quickly and quietly. Nyx stood up, her legs still shaky from the empathic connection. James, please, just let me go with them. It's the only way to keep everyone safe. Absolutely not. James's voice carried the authority of command. You're part of this unit now. We don't leave our people behind. I'm not your people, Nyx protested. I'm the enemy. You stopped being the enemy the moment you chose to save us instead of your mission. James pulled her into his arms, and she could feel his heartbeat against her chest. You're mine now, Nyx, and I'm not letting anyone take you away from me. The kiss that followed was desperate, filled with the knowledge that it might be their last. Nyx felt her control slip away completely, her empathic abilities flooding James with everything she felt. For him, love, fear, hope, desperation, all of it pouring between them in a connection that transcended species. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily. James's eyes held a new depth, as if he had experienced emotions that weren't entirely his own. What did you do? He whispered. I shared my feelings with you, so you would know, even if they take my memories away, that what we had was real. Nyx touched his face gently. I love you, James Rivera. I love your species, your courage, your capacity for hope in the face of impossible odds. And I love you, he replied. His voice steadied despite the circumstances, which is why I'm not giving up on us. Alarms began blaring throughout the compound. On the communication system, Sergeant Torres's voice crackled with urgency. Captain, we have multiple contacts entering the atmosphere. Unknown ship configurations, but they're definitely not human. James looked at Nix, then at Keeper, then back at her. It's time to show your people what humans are really capable of. Nix felt a surge of pride mixed with terror. She had studied human military tactics, but she had never seen them in action against a truly superior force. Her people were about to learn what happened when you threaten something a human loved. She only hoped they would all survive the lesson. The choice between worlds. The Kethmori ships descended through Mars' thin atmosphere, like silver tears in the rust-colored sky. From the compound's observation deck, Nix watched her people's vessels with a mixture of awe and dread. She had forgotten how beautiful they were, how their bioorganic hulls seemed to flow like liquid metal through the void. How many? James asked, standing beside her in full combat gear. 3 scout vessels and 1 command ship, Nix replied, her enhanced vision picking out details invisible to human eyes. The command ship will carry at least 50 warriors and a mind bridge. What's a mind bridge? A telepath powerful enough to rewrite memories across multiple subjects simultaneously. Nix's voice was barely a whisper. They brought her for me. James activated his communicator. All units, maintain defensive positions, but do not fire unless fired upon. This is a diplomatic situation until proven otherwise. Across the compound, human soldiers took positions behind barriers and weapon emplacements. They were vastly outgunned, and everyone knew it, but Nix could feel their determination, their refusal to surrender even in the face of impossible odds. It was the most human thing she had ever experienced. There's something else you should know, Keeper said, joining them on the observation deck. The transformed Valkyrie moved with surprising grace despite its massive size. The Dominion of Shadows is watching this encounter. They want to see how both species react under pressure. You mean this is a test? James demanded. Everything is a test to them. They manipulate conflicts to study species psychology. Keeper's multiple eyes track the descending ships. If humanity shows too much potential, they will arrange for your destruction. If the Kethmori prove too rigid, they will engineer their downfall as well. Nix felt the blood drain from her face. We're all pawns in their game. Then it's time to stop playing by their rules, James said grimly. The lead Kethmori ship landed in the compound's central courtyard with barely a whisper of displaced air. The bioorganic hull rippled like water, forming an opening that expelled 3 figures in flowing silver robes. Nix recognized the center figure immediately and felt her heart break a little more. Commander Zethara, she breathed. My former mentor. The Kethmori delegation approached under a flag of truce, their movements fluid and hypnotic. Commander Zethara was everything Nix remembered. Tall, elegant, with skin that seemed to contain entire galaxies of stars. Her violet eyes held the wisdom of centuries and the coldness of deep space. Agent Nix, Zethara called out, her harmonic voice carrying easily across the courtyard. You will come with us now. Your contamination can still be cleansed. James stepped forward, placing himself between Nix and her former mentor. She's not going anywhere. Zethara's gaze shifted to the human captain, and Nix could see the disdain in her expression. You are the source of her corruption. Stand aside, primitive, before we remove you permanently. With respect, James replied, his voice steady. Go to hell. The other Kethmori warriors moved to flank their commander, their weapons beginning to glow with contained energy. Round the courtyard, human soldiers tensed, ready to fight despite knowing they couldn't win. Wait, Nix called out, stepping around James despite his attempt to stop her. She walked into the open space between the two forces, her silver skin gleaming in the Martian sunlight. Commander, I invoke the right of challenge. Zethara's eyes widened slightly. You would challenge the collective's will. After everything we taught you, you taught me to seek truth above all else, Nix replied. The truth is that humanity isn't the threat we believed them to be. They're our salvation. Explain yourself, child. Nix took a deep breath, knowing she had one chance to save both species, The Dominion of Shadows is real, Commander. They've been manipulating us for centuries, using us to eliminate potential allies while they prepare for their final conquest. Impossible. The Dominion is mythology. No, Keeper said. Stepping forward, I am proof of their existence. They created me as a weapon to kill Agent Nix when she became too compromised to serve their purposes. Zethara studied the transformed Valkyrie with new interest. You were a hunter. How are you capable of rational speech? She saved me, Keeper replied. Gesturing toward Nix, used your people's empathic gifts to burn away the artificial aggression the Dominion implanted. In my mind, for the first time, in 30 cycles, I remember who I was before they changed me. The commander's expression began to shift, uncertainty replacing certainty. If what you say is true, then we have been deceived for millennia. More than deceived, Nix said urgently. We've been used. Every species we've classified as a threat, every civilization we've helped eliminate, they were all potential allies against the real danger. And you believe these humans are different. I know they are. Nix reached out and took James's hand, feeling his strength flow through her. They love without condition, fight without hope of victory, sacrifice everything for those they care about. They're everything we once were before we became cold and analytical. James squeezed her hand, then stepped forward to address the Kethmori commander directly. Ma'am, I don't know much about galactic politics or ancient enemies, but I know that Nix risked everything to save my people. She chose love over duty, hope over despair. If that's contamination, then I hope it spreads to every corner of the galaxy. Zethara was quiet for a long moment, studying the joined hands of the human and the Kethmori. When she spoke, her voice carried a new note of uncertainty. The collective will not accept this reasoning. They will demand her return for memory cleansing. Then the collective will have to go through us, James said simply. You would fight the entire Kethmori fleet for one compromised agent? No, James replied with a slight smile. We'd fight them for a member of our family. The word hit Nix like a physical blow. Family. In all her centuries of existence, she had never truly understood the concept. The Kethmori valued duty and efficiency above personal connections. But James was offering her something her own people never had: unconditional acceptance. There may be another way, Zethara said slowly. If Agent Nix were to undergo voluntary exile, severing all ties with the collective, she would be beyond our jurisdiction, but she would also be beyond our protection. She'll have our protection, James said immediately. Against the Dominion of Shadows? Against forces that have manipulated galactic politics for millennia? Zethara shook her head. You have no idea what you're offering to face. Then help us face it, Nix said suddenly. Commander, you trained me to think for myself, to question everything. I'm questioning our blind obedience to a system that may have been compromised from the beginning. Zethara looked around the courtyard, taking in the defensive positions, the determined faces of the human soldiers, the transformed Valkyrie standing peacefully among them. When her gaze returned to Nix, something fundamental had changed in her expression. Perhaps, she said carefully, it is time for the Kethmori to remember what we once fought for, instead of simply what we fight against. She raised her hand, and the other Kethmori warriors lowered their weapons. Agent Nix, I hereby grant your request for voluntary exile. You are no longer bound by collective law or protected by collective authority. Commander, one of the other Kethmori protested. The collective will view this as treason. Then let them. Zethara replied with a smile that reminded Nix why she had once admired her mentor so much. Perhaps it's time for some of us to be contaminated by hope. James pulled Nix into his arms, and she felt the last barriers between her old life and her new one dissolve completely. Around them, human soldiers were cheering, their joy infectious even to the stoic Kethmori. So what happens now? Nix asked, looking up at James. Now we prepare for war, he replied. But this time, we won't be fighting alone. High above Mars, hidden in the shadow of its largest moon, a ship of impossible darkness watched the proceedings. Inside, beings that had manipulated galactic events for millennia began to recalculate their plans. The variables had changed. Alliances were forming that they had not anticipated. The game was far from over. But for the first time in eons, they were no longer the only players on the surface of Mars. As two species began to forge an alliance that would reshape the galaxy, Nix and James held each other and prepared to face whatever came next. They had chosen love over duty, hope over despair, and in doing so, they had given the galaxy something it had never had before, a fighting chance. The battlefield had fallen silent when she touched the enemy's monster. But from that silence, a new song was beginning to rise, a song of unity, of love transcending species, of ordinary beings choosing to do extraordinary things. It was the most human song of all, and it was about to change everything.